thing. All I wanna do is show up at your place and say, let's try this again. I wonder if you think of me. Did you?
Happy Independence Day, everyone. Thanks for showing up to MCS episode 42. I've titled today's little powwow, Independence Day Pep Talk, and will Musk third party derail or restore America first? And whatever you want to roast. So how are we doing, Nikki, Eric?
I'm doing well. Happy Independence Day, guys. Yeah.
You guys got a day off. You don't have to work. I think it's a work day for the rest of the world. And like, what are you guys taking a day off for? What's this whole thing about independence?
I'm always working. It was so funny. I was just having this conversation with my husband last night. He's like, our stores closed and all the stuff. Like, yeah, some of them are part of the day closed, but most are open on Independence Day. And I think next year it's a big celebration. I think everything should close. I think we should be celebrating our country. But
well, as a physician,
it's not on fire.
I believe can I say if your husband is in a tight line of work where they have to be on standby?
He is in law enforcement, and he is actually participating in a parade today. So he is
okay. So it's yeah, there are still people who have to work to keep the lights on and keep things running for us. So
yes.
Thank you.
I mean, and of course, he's always on duty. So yeah.
What about you, Eric? You got your day off
Yeah. It's funny because it's a Friday, and the kids are out, school anyway. So summer's just this big long blur. I knew Independence Day was today, but I actually had a couple meetings scheduled. So like a couple of us made the same mistake. We just, I don't know. We in our minds, I think we thought it was Saturday, right? That's all good. Nothing super pressing.
Yeah.
I
don't normally work on Fridays anyway. Well, technically, I have to go in anywhere or have meetings scheduled on Fridays, but I work all the time.
So do we have any coffee beans that we want to roast today that's really foremost in your mind that you have been brewing all this week that you want to turn into a nice little drink?
I think it's the big beautiful bill, right? Isn't that the big beautiful news?
You know that was going to happen anyway, right?
Yeah.
It was no way because Mr. Art of the Deal.
Well,
he does whatever he needs to do to whether, I don't know.
Well, I was interested in his comments on Maria Bartiromo's show over the weekend on Sunday. I thought that was very telling about how the swap works. And I'm not terribly surprised by all of it, but I'm quite disappointed. In particular, was focused on, she asked him questions about certain parts of the Build Back Better, aka Green Energy Bill, and those things being kind of removed. And he said, he really was frank with it and said that there were congressmen who were in districts where they were starting some of these projects that were already funded, that he did not want to end the project and he specifically pointed out that they needed to be reelected. And so it's just telling. I mean, every part of a huge omnibus spending bill is going to be, included in every huge omnibus spending bill is going to be pork to satisfy people so that they can keep their positions. And yes, it is strategically necessary for Republicans to keep their business. That is a political play, to keep their positions. That is a necessary political play. But at the same time, those Republicans were voted in just like him, with the understanding that we were going to cut spending and cut a lot of these programs and initiatives. So it's hugely disappointing. Yes, absolutely. Is it difficult for us to say sitting here that we would strike an X to every single program that was funded by Biden and not and highly risk seats, political seats. It's easy to say that when you're not sitting there, but for us to move forward as a country, we want to make some very tough decisions. And doing what's right for the people, I think, should be the foremost thing, not keeping people in positions of political power. I think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We're never getting this moment again, at least in my lifetime, where we have the opportunity to slash things and cut government regulations, cut government spending from a congressional level. Are there still opportunities during this next 3 years? Sure, but I'm not hopeful. So that's kind of me in a nutshell with the big beautiful bill. I'm still disappointed in the extreme mega crowd who is just absolutely whatever Trump says and agrees with. We need to trust him. And no, you actually do have to think for yourself and think about why you voted for him, not just fall in line with every single thing that he does. That's really disappointing that people still exist that way. But that's been my thoughts for the week.
Eric, what's your feeling about the people who are confusing these legacy shovel-ready contracts and pay-for-play deals for America First? Because I think there's a lot of confusion, right? You bundle everything together. The reality is the constituents did not vote for any of this. They were just thinking America First, but the swamp decided to staple on the stuff from past few administrations that says, they won't know. We'll just kind of sneak it in through this. What's your feeling about that?
I largely agree with Nikki. I think that it's a bummer. We're all grown up enough to know that these omnibus comprehensive bills are, just these huge pieces of crap filled with pork. Everybody's got, and it's become this thing where it's a rush. It's a scramble for everybody to shove their project or their little, Christmas ornaments in there. So it's not surprising, right, that's the instinct. But Trump he was a big spender during his first administration, right?
Yes,
like
he
we
was.
all know he's
Yep.
just transactional.
Yep.
There is an element here of,
Yeah.
I want to get something done and I don't care what that something is, right? Like it's that I think that's why it's kind of jading, it's extra depressing because it's almost as if Trump and his team don't quite understand what their coalition was that got them elected. Trump has a hardcore 35% who will defend him, as he says, if he shoots somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue. Yeah, that 35% never shakes, no matter what. And that's gold in politics. But that 35% doesn't get you elected. Trump won with essentially 50% of the national vote, won all the swing states, et cetera, et cetera. So where did that extra 15% come from? A large portion of that was Maha, and a large portion of that was Doge. And Doge did come sort of late in the campaign. Trump was not necessarily, again, this is what a lot of the new MAGAs, say. They're like, well, cutting spending wasn't really part of that for him. And it was, though. He was sort of scrabbling and grabbling together, filling the tent up in the run up to November just to win. And I think everybody was in favor of that. The GOP is the big tent party now. And a big part of that big tent is fiscal conservatives, budget hawks, Doge. That includes the IT crowd. Say what you want about Elon. I don't think he handled everything the best he could. But Doge was more popular than I think most people thought it was going to be. And that's why when this bill came along, and again, this bill's been in the being written for about 18 months, apparently. I mean, it's just, it's nothing's new, right? But they were sort of finalizing it after this. They had already done the horse trading. And that's what was so depressing, I think, that this time there was a spirit, a national mood where we all felt like it wasn't going to be business as usual, right? That we had an opportunity. This is the first time since Ross Perot that we've been talking about this stuff on a national level. with any, seriousness. And, again, this, Trump's desire to get something, and it doesn't matter what that something is, through, so he can go ka-ching, I did this thing, is, that's kind of the problem. And again, in my opinion, he misused his political capital, and it was a bad strategy because he came out of the gate and there were two camps of GOP who were going to potentially be no votes to this thing, right? There were the fiscal conservatives, which we've lived with forever. It's the Freedom Caucus. It's the Masseys of the world. It's the Chip Roys. They're very transparent. They're very predictable. They always come out and complain about this stuff. They often vote no. They're a known entity. And then on the other side, you had, a gaggle of big spender, swampy, really unhelpful, frankly, GOP people that were not reading the national room, not willing to take, a look. And again, not take a hit, but like everybody is going to be sharing in this. Like your district isn't going to get quite as much as maybe you thought. My district is not going to get as much as we thought, but we're all doing this for the country, right? So that was sort of the national mood. And instead of using his political capital, his bully pulpit, Truth Social, the torpedoes and the nukes that he throws out, and his army, right? Frankly, his social media army of attack dogs, he sicked them on the fiscal conservatives instead of the big swampy spenders. And again, both of these groups were screwing up his bill. Okay. But the national mood dictated that now was the time. If ever there was a time to go, hey, big spender people, this is your time. We're going to call you out. Yeah, we get it that you got this huge payday from Biden and you've got all these coffers greased and you have all these businesses and things that want this, these millions of dollars that aren't theirs. But you know what? We're going to cut it and we're going to put you on blast if you don't do it, and you're going to get on board.
Can I interject here for a second and just illustrate this, to emphasize that point, because which is fantastic. 100% agree with you. When that video, I don't know if you guys saw it. There's a video of Lisa McCarthy, goodness gracious, Murkowski that surfaced, or a transcript of something where she said that she never voted for Trump and that she was against him, but she ended up getting what she wanted out of this bill.
That's very telling.
This is an example of that leverage that he did not utilize, Eric. I just think I think it's sickening that you are actively campaigning against the people who like Massey and Freedom Caucus and people who want to be fiscally conservative, who are reading the room of the American people, but you are supporting and yielding to the people who hate you and hate your coalition.
Yeah.
That's
it's just I just think it's a strategic mistake. I think it's an old Washington way of reading the playbook. You know what I mean? It's funny because in so many ways Trump represents this new era of politics, right? Like he's just not going to do it the way it used to be done or the way it's always been done or the way it should be done. He doesn't care. But this was one of those things where he kind of stuck to like an outdated playbook. And again, I think that what he's done by doing this, unfortunately, I think he's begun to fracture his own coalition and actually cause the damage, the very same damage that he was, purportedly trying to avoid. Because I've heard him say what you saw him say on Maria Bartiromo this last weekend. I've even heard the representatives in these districts say the same thing, which is, I can't have this stuff cut because I have to be reelected in the midterms. Okay. So here's just a couple things on that. Number one, the midterms are light years away. If you haven't noticed, our political cycle is on light speed. It's crazy. It's fast. Things change every single day. You can have a representative who is, in the dumps in the polls right now. That person, he or she, could do something and then immediately, switch around, become, super popular and awesome and win the day. And again, 1.5 years from now. It's a long way. Okay. So it's not like there's an election happening in August that everybody's got to be, buttoned up for and doesn't want to cut this program, blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
So this
Correct.
idea that we're already talking about, I know, look, I'm actually a fan of increasing the representative cycle from 2 to 4, because I think 2 is too quick. That aside, it's still so long away. And to pretend that like that's the main thing that you're worried about right now, it doesn't really, align with actual political reality. And the other thing that's related to this is that, take Lawler in New York, for instance. He said, and I'm all over the SALT thing, obviously. And again,
Yes.
the
Yes.
SALT,
Yeah. It's
the
huge.
SALT giveaway, the kickback caused so many problems in this bill. It was amazing because that represented, like $700 billion of pay for, of offset that the Congressional Budget Office looks at, which the fiscal hawks look at. That SALT giveaway was almost like taking the queen off of your chessboard in the first couple moves of a major chess match. It was really dumb of Trump to do that. But these representatives that are clanging the bell saying, like, if I don't keep this pork in, I'm not going to get reelected. What that does is it expresses a lack of faith in Trump's actual agenda. I, for one,
Absolutely.
I think that this bill is largely like not great, but there are some great things in there. I'm in favor of these tax cuts. I'm a supply sider. I'm a Clearwater guy. The Laffer curve is real. When you cut taxes and cut regulation, it increases economic activity, which also increases tax revenue. And we know that the Congressional Budget Office does not take that into account. So when these representatives say, if I don't get to keep my crappy Biden pork projects, or I won't get reelected, all that is another way of saying, I don't trust the plan. And once again, Trump was
Absolutely.
attacking.
And I don't
right?
trust fiscal conservatism. I don't
Exactly.
trust what I stand for
It was
and
so
what I
backwards.
say I stand for
Big
anyway.
strategic mistake.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say. I think,
Yep.
Trump is so good with his instincts on this. And I say this a lot. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if he made this call or his peeps made this call, but it was the wrong call. He attacked the wrong people and he caused schisms in his coalition that he did not need to cause. It's a bummer.
I'm
Yeah.
going
And the
to.
thing is, he doesn't need to be reelected. He can't be reelected. So why does he care? Like, this is one of the things that I actually came out early in support of him, because I felt like he would come out and really act scorching the earth, because he wouldn't have anything else to lose. He's already lost businesses. He's already had his physical life threatened multiple times. Just go out and do what we said. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why do you care about the swamp? Why do you care about these things?
Because,
And I'm
again,
sitting here with egg on my face, actually, because I argue. I really also cared about foreign policy, and I cared about illegal immigration. Those were big ones for me. So those were my my big deals. But I remember hearing the DeSantis coalition saying, "Oh, he's not going to be fiscally conservative. He's going to do this." They're saying everything that came true, and I didn't defend his overspending in the past or anything like that. And I had low expectations for the Republican Party in general, but it's still disappointing. It still sucks to see that realized, right?
missed
So,
opportunity for sure.
yep, yeah.
But do you feel he has delivered on some of his?
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
The immigration, there's more money for ICE, more ICE agents. Like, for me, that's still a huge issue. I'm seeing even a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans arguing, "Oh no, we should keep some of these law-abiding illegal immigrants." No, they're not. They're not law-abiding. This is very detrimental to our society if we allow people to come in illegally without following the rules that everybody else follows, and then come in and compete with spaces and positions and do illegal activities to survive and stay alive that are in direct competition with American citizens. This hurts every single one of us from every level, and people don't see this at all. Like I have compassion for these people. Of course you want to come here and have a better life. Of course you want to come here and open up your hot dog stand and take advantage of capitalism in this way when you're coming from a communist country. But yeah, we all do. And I have that compassion. I understand why people want to come here and do this, but you are making an adult choice to do this, or you're sending your child here. It's also contributing to human trafficking and pedophile rings, all of these horrible things that come along with it. There's no reason why we should be sanctioning any person who's here illegally. I don't get it at all. So that's been really, really frustrating and heartbreaking to me to see that part of conservatism breaking up. I understand what where the libertarians come from. They're very consistent on their positions on this. That's fine, but Republicans, no way. I don't get it.
I think this has a lot to do with, there is this special VIP lounge that is with all presidents, right? And agribusiness and the hotel industry probably have a speed dial, or they get invited to Mar-a-Lago and they say, we need you to maybe to make an exception on our labor force, which is built primarily from quote unquote illegals. So I was kind of disappointed he also flip-flopped on that. Now, I don't know whether that's just a remark. I don't know if that he will carry that through as a policy, but
no, he said this also on Maria Bartiromo's show last Sunday. He said that he was making deals with farmers to let the farmers decide who were good elements and who were bad elements.
He's actually making deals.
He said this. He said this on the show. If we could pull up the clip.
Well, I have it on the screen right now. He said it again in his rally last night. Yeah, and everybody's freaking out about it.
So he's going back on his word about deporting all illegal immigrants.
Oh, that's super.
He would do it.
Really?
He's not doing it.
Yeah. But the good thing, guys, is that aside from the mooey mega magas, right? The really hardcore, bone dumb, follow anything he does, says, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of the MAGA coalition, even some influencers, who push back on him. They really do. Yeah. Rarely, but this is one of the issues that they do. And this guy Cernovich is, I would say, he's 98% mooey mega maga. He's tweets about how awful Massey is for having said no to the big beautiful bill. But again, look at this. Trump gives a speech yesterday, and he comes out. He has a series of tweets that get. This guy has a big following. These are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes and views and shares and things. And it's interesting because the Charlie Kirks of the world are just silent. They don't say anything on this issue because they actually disagree too, right? Correct. But you do have some MAGAs who come out like Cernovich, and there's several others. I just chose him. They come out and say, hell no, this is going to be, you're going to lose me on this. Please listen. And to his credit, Trump does. I think if you guys remember a couple weeks ago with the Iran situation and Israel situation, not to go into it, but there were factions. And it was pretty obvious that Trump was not only listening to the swampy experts, right? Sort of the war council. He certainly was listening, to the people who didn't quite agree with what he was going to do and what he ended up doing. Even though he ended up doing it, you could tell that it was sinking in. He was listening to a degree. So he does listen. So we got to keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay? I feel like this whole MAGA thing has become what's the word? Rudderless.
I don't think so. I mean, it's still there, right? I would argue that Maha has had a better run so far than Doge, right? And again, I put those two in the same. Again, go back to the 35%, and then you have to break up that 15% that got Trump up to his 50, right? And I would say, 3 to 5% of that is Maha, and 3 to 5% of that is Doge, and there's other independent voters and reluctant Republicans in there. But again, Doge was very popular. Maha is very popular. But Doge just goes against DC. It goes against so much of what's so wrong with our system. And we all know this. Those programs, even though everybody, I don't like the Green New Deal, Biden sucks, right? When that $1 billion contract comes in to your state and local businesses get this free money, to make whatever it is, batteries or solar panels or whatever, boondoggle it is, they're making money. They're paying out people who are on staff that make money. They have families, they have mortgages. It is so messy. It is so sticky. It is so awful. And it sucks. It's so addictive. And the left knows
People
this.
vote with their wallets.
Right? They know if they can just get it out there and get these claws into people. Even principled conservatives are like, well, I got bills to pay.
That's the problem, though, that once you allocate something, once you start giving people things, dishing it out from the federal government, or from any level of government, it is very difficult to take that away. And I don't get, the most conservative people fold under this. Real true conservatism, fiscal conservatism is difficult. It is hard. You will have to have hardships. But if people understood this from the standpoint of their own personal finances. I'm just use my own personal example. I was making a ton of money as a doctor a few years ago. I left my career behind. I'm not making that money anymore. We have had to make substantial cuts in our budget to completely eliminate things that were comfortable for us. And do that. It's painful. It is difficult to tell your kids no. It is difficult once you were giving them things to not be able to do that anymore. But you have to do it. You have to survive. Money is not going to magically just show up. The problem with the federal government, however, is that money is going to magically show up because you're going to keep demanding it in the form of taxation from the people. So that's what makes it difficult to do, because now you are spending other people's money. You're not spending your own money. And if people understood just kind of those basic principles of fiscal responsibility from their own individual self, then it would be a lot easier to kind of get these things through. You're not going to get the young liberal person who's never held a job, a person who's never owned anything, a person who has no family and a responsibilities only themselves, to think that way. You're not going to get pure communists, or a coalition of socialists to actually believe that. But for people who are actually kind of thinking about it, who really want to survive, want to break free, want to have some financial independence, they will understand this. When they go get a job and where they're working and that money's coming out of their taxes, that tax money's coming out and it's funding all these other things for other people, and they're making it difficult for them to get ahead. Or they have a business and they're trying to get it off the ground and they've got a ton of regulations that's keeping them from getting it, but they see some large corporation who can handle all of those regulations getting ahead and doing those things. Or some illegal immigrant is on the street doing it without any regulations hampered down on them, then they'll get it. But you have to make the case. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's standing up for, for any of these principles at all, to convince the people who really will be convinced that we need to do this. Now, I will say that when Doge first came out, I think I was actually on that X space when Elon Musk was introducing the idea of Doge with then candidate Trump. And he was really thinking of it being a tool to help government be more efficient. He wasn't really in terms of wasteful spending of government. And I think that he still wanted to have certain things spent, money spent. He had this idea. So, part of his issue is now, being upset that, the mandate for electric cars is going away, that kind of thing. So, I think his ideas of fiscal responsibility aren't the same as every one of us. And that's something we all need to tease out anyway. But
Yeah.
I think he was more about making government efficient. You can't make government efficient. That's an absolute fantasy. Government, everything that government is involved in is going to be less efficient and is going to steal from the people. Period. That is exactly what it is. So that's a huge disappointment. But I think Doge is popular, Eric, because people were seeing people things, ideas about getting things cut from the federal government. And in the beginning, remember, we laid off a bunch of people. We gave people an option to early retire or take a buyout and early retire. A bunch of people lost their freaking federal jobs because we were on the track to actually cut spending. If we continue to fund these departments, but we've killed people and people lost their jobs for this, then what did we actually do? That's for me the most disappointing thing with Doge, is because if we did, I mean, I have family members and friends who were affected by those policies, and and I stood by them. I was very, and I still do. I think we do need to cut those things, but if we're still giving to those departments and people lost their jobs, did they lose their jobs for nothing? I don't know the answer to that.
Agree. And
that's something that needs to be answered.
yeah. And on top, just real quick on top of that, look, I mean, I would argue that Elon is, he's a personality. He's like semi-autistic. He went a little crazy, but I think overall his performance with Doge was fine. You know what I mean? I think it was, he overpromised some stuff, and that's sort of what Trump wants. Like, I think he was trying to give Trump his talk, give him the praise that he requires. But at the same time, you have the world's richest dude who is a genius and has, is making, reinventing the car market. He's shooting, he's, launching all the stuff into space. He's got Starlink. I mean, this isn't just anybody. This is Elon Musk. He's, again, the richest guy on earth right now. He drops everything to campaign with you. And along the way, he, ruins or harms his brands. He harms the reputation, by doing this, by endorsing. And he doesn't care. He keeps going through it, even though he's getting shot with all these arrows. People are, threatening him. They're burning his dealerships. He still sticks in. He stays with Doge. He keeps doing what he was, he promised to do.
Yeah.
He brought in other tech leaders. I mean, they focused on like big balls and like these, these data monkeys and stuff. But there were also, CEOs and really, other billionaires that, gave up their personal time. And a lot of them gave up their money in terms of political donations to make this happen. And then Team Trump turns around and doesn't even give them lip service, right? You got to remember that this bill was always going to be a pile of crap, right? To some degree. But you really only saw the sales blurbs coming out at the very end. Stephen Miller was on X a lot, really making the case for the big, beautiful bill at the end. And only at the end were they trying to frame it in terms of like, well, it doesn't really, raise the budget and it cuts this and it's actually more fiscally responsible coming out of the Senate. But again, in terms of strategy, in terms of political unity and protecting and, and honestly feeding and growing and keeping healthy this coalition that you do ultimately need for reelection again down the road, just took a shotgun and embarrassed Elon. Honestly, again, he did not react well to the little Trump spat. He went from 0 to pedophile, or like he's like, whoa, dude. But again, are you going to really piss off the world's richest dude? Are you really going to, sort of waft away, the personal pain that he endured for you, for the country, in this program? He was treated very badly. He was brushed aside. He was not, given at least any lip service by the GOP during this entire process.
Of course not.
And
they weren't going to. They weren't going to. He was Trump's boy. Half of the GOP currently still hates Trump.
Of course,
This is reality, and this is the problem here. While we talk about a third party initiative, Mega has zero control at the party level, at the central committee, county level, at the state party level, at the national level. There is no mega coalition in charge of anything. This is a problem. If you or America First, whatever you want to call it, it is not there. It is not in place. If you introduce an idea of a third party, it's also going to fail. Look how long libertarians have been around. We've never elected a libertarian president. We have zero libertarians in Congress and Senate. That are, even though Massey and Paul act like libertarians, they don't run as libertarians, they run as Republicans because they can't win at a national level. It's not going to happen. These parties have dominance. So until we get a mindset that we need to take over these parties and actually do the work to take them over to get what we want, it won't change. And I just don't think the American people have the heart to do it. You look at this coalition of MAGA that's folded in and stands behind Trump, no matter what he does. They are not going to know what to do with themselves when Trump leaves office. Their identity is completely around this.
Yeah.
So I want to move to the part about this third party and get everyone's take. But I'll start up by saying that, like what you said, Nikki, I don't think Rocket Man understands the complexity and the mechanics of how party systems work, even at the local level. He doesn't understand that.
Right.
And then personally, I'm not a fan of third parties, just even though I understand where he's coming from. And then also I've seen some of Musk's personal point of view of what his definition is, America First. Some of the items don't strike me as America First. They're more like a technocracy first point of view. And I don't know where this is going to land. I think it's just more like a sandbox idea. I don't think I think he should be smart enough to know, don't throw good money on bad projects, and this is a bad project. I think right now he's just reacting to it. But unless he knows how the local, like you said, precinct committee and even the Board of Elections system works, which is very super gnarly. Okay, this is just going to be just a drawing board idea. It's not going to go anywhere. I think his best prospect is maybe to work a concession with Mr. Art of the Deal. I think that's because Trump likes to make deals with everyone, right? So maybe they can come to some agreement, or maybe, I don't know, Eric, you tell me that's too late.
I will say the spirit of his thought is good. And if he does know that you need to take over at the central committee level, at the state committee level, if he does know that and gets his mind to working on it, I think, watch out.
Yeah.
I think that's important. But the third party,
the reason he wants to work with a third party, as you and I know, is because if he has to continue to work within the GOP, he's probably done dealing with all the party hacks, right? He doesn't have to deal with the chairs at the state level. He doesn't want to deal with the chairs at the national level. And that's why I think he's thinking from a businessman's perspective too. I'm going to do a new startup where I don't have to deal with all these legacy mid-level executive hacks in the GOP. I can get the rocket to launch, off the. I can get this project launched much quicker than I would have to deal within the GOP. So that's where it's coming from. But personally, I don't think this third party thing is going to go anywhere.
And again, this was unnecessary, right? They pissed off the world's richest guy. For what? For what? They wanted to give Lawler from New York a mediocre at best representative who is extremely off-putting and probably never going to have a political position after this. They gave deference to him and not a little nod to Elon. Again, I keep going back to how profoundly bad and sort of ill-conceived this political strategy was. Like, this is a guy you don't piss off publicly. Even Trump. This guy has all the money in the world. He has all the time in the world. And he has the means to do this stuff. And he's now talking about starting a third party, all because you didn't, in your big, beautiful bill. Again, I would argue that again, it is what it is. It's going to be a Christmas tree, but PR wise, you can talk the talk. You can sell it. They didn't mention Doge. They didn't mention savings. They didn't mention cuts. They didn't mention fiscal responsibility at all until the very end. And after so many people had peeled off. Again, I keep going back to, like, who's making these decisions? Who's around Trump that's allowing that decision to be made? It's a mistake. And this is what we're seeing now. Elon may or may not come back into the fold, but this was an unforced error. Like, who does this?
So I want to point out a couple of things with that bar chart here. First, I think Elon Musk also kind of lives in his bubble, right? So when he puts out a poll like that, it will be to a captured audience. We kind of know from stats in general, stats are very general. They're not really reflective of the complex reality. So that poll right there is really more of the audience, that is captured audience. I don't think that bar chart there with over 60%.
Oh, totally. You should read the comments. The comments are almost all saying, no, don't do it.
Yeah. So outside of that, it's not reflective of the entirety of MAGAverse. And then, of course, you have people even outside of who are not kind of losing their first love for MAGA now, the libertarians, right? I know a lot of them don't necessarily are for Team Elon Musk too. So I think these charts are can be very just not reflective of how fragmented things are. It's not as simple as that. That's my take.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
I mean, this is doomed to fail. But it just sucks. It's depressing to me just because it didn't have to happen. Yeah. And I think Trump would be very smart to pivot a little bit here, because part of the promise, in DC, promises are like, I don't know, they're not in gold or anything, but the promise was to pass the big beautiful bill, and then they're going to go back and do the cuts and try and make the fiscal people happy. I'm still holding out a little hope, because there is a lot of public opinion around what we're talking about, right? Trump does listen. His people do listen. You look at, again, you look at like Stephen Miller was out there trying to make the sale at the end. His comment section was not go, 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 right? His comment section was like, why don't you just make the bill better? Why don't you make some of these cuts? Why'd you, you know what I mean? Like, cut this Green New Deal stuff. So, perhaps he's going to, pivot a little bit, come back and do some of the Doge stuff like he promises. I would argue that if he does that, and put some weight behind that, there's an opportunity to fix this schism. If he doesn't, then it's over. And then ironically, Trump will have essentially lost the midterms for himself.
Yep.
One other thing I want to point out about people who always go around saying they want to start parties, third parties, and going back to libertarians, I know that the people, they don't tend to want to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work. No. It's easy to say I want to start a third party, but take it from, again, someone who's knocking doors, doing precinct work. You there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and that you have to put in outside of just posting. Let's start a third party. It's not as simple as that. You have to do fundraising, and then you have to deal with the Board of Elections. So I don't know what his game plan is, if he's serious about starting a third party, or who would he necessarily appeal to? Like, say in my precinct, I can tell you that majority of people don't even live on X. They're not on X, even though it seems like we have this idea
Yeah.
that everyone is looking at X, but that's no one has time
Correct.
to look at. It's just people who are
Yes.
really tapped in. They think that X is representative of the conversation the country is having. So that's my take. Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But I would argue that X is a bit of a leading indicator. X is where political public opinion is formed. You know, it's the political PR sausage factory, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump doesn't necessarily post on here as much as he did when it was Twitter before he, before Truth Social came, but he still posts on X,
Yeah,
and his Truth Social posts get put on X.
That's
So, Truth Social is still an echo chamber of its own. It's not, most of America has not
That's true.
moved to True Social. So X is
No.
still a center. And if you're looking at the two like kind of major platforms between this and Facebook, you're just not. I mean, you have Facebook is just siloed completely, so this is I still agree. And look at all the people who moved to Blue Sky after the election who are now coming back to X. Blue Sky's imploding. So it's still the place where we can actually have discourse, whether or not we agree with the people who are on the platform. And a lot of, the other platforms are a lot more restricted or, and limited in scope
really
because of, yeah.
Yep.
So could it be, you think that's a good point. Do you think that a lot of Trump's like backsliding is because he lives more on Truth Social than on X, that he is like in his own bubble and there isn't enough feedback to tell him, hey, you're kind of going off the tracks here. You could.
Yeah, I think he has his, I think it goes back to what Eric said in the beginning. He wants to get something done, and getting something done, creating deals and making deals to get something done, get some signature things done. I think also he thinks that a lot of stuff is being handled at the executive level as well, so with his executive orders, because he can go and say, look, I did this, I wrote this, I signed this executive order to do this. My department of whatever is doing this thing because I wrote this executive order. So I still think that he thinks that that is doing something as well. But codifying these things, at the congressional level for him is deal making, and he's limited in his. He feels like he's limited in his ability, and and he's got a coalition of people who are pretty much the same crew. He limits that because he doesn't trust anybody. And that's reasonable. If you don't have people who are loyal to you and going to go stab you in the back and leave and then go on, multiple talk shows and write a book, about you, that's still important to him. And that's just, how old is he now? 78, 79, that you're not going to change that about him at all. So that the arguments for a younger president who is America first, people who support DeSantis would have. That's why they argued a lot for him, because he's younger, and he's not going to. Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of arguments for him, and there's lots of arguments against him.
Yep.
But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I think that is part of this. I'm set in my ways. This is what I want to do. I got some things done, and then this will be my legacy when I'm done. That's it. Everything else is on the rest of you people.
Totally. And I would just add that, he's, everybody's in a bubble, right? You were saying Elon's in his own bubble. Trump's absolutely in a bubble. Although again, he does listen. I contend that he seems to actually, have his ear to the ground in some helpful ways a lot of time. But again, he's still he was an outsider at first in DC. I don't know if he's an insider yet, because I think, Perseus, what you said before was correct. I think that, most of DC who are Republicans are not MAGA. They really don't like him that much still. You know what I mean? They're publicly kissing his butt, but they're not MAGA. They're not really on board. There's a lot more of them, who are on Team Trump to some degree or another, legitimately, than before. But he is, and he knows this. He's working against people that outwardly hate him, and he's working against people that secretly hate him. And he just doesn't care. He, again, wants to get these deals done. He wants to chalk up. He wants marks in his bedpost or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he wants accomplishments. And again, that's an old school DC mentality, right? That was one of the things that really bugged me about Biden. Biden was like, I did the Inflation Reduction Act and blah, blah, blah. It's like, does anybody think like that anymore? Like this old school, cha-ching accomplishment, charade that politicians run? I don't think so. But and so it's frustrating to see Trump kind of operating on that antiquated principle as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think DC acts that way. The political parties themselves act that way. They boast these things on their platforms.
That's right.
But the American people have spoken, like, in both parties, they are calling bullshit on a lot of this stuff. Like, yeah, okay, you did that. What did that do for me?
Right.
And people are asking and pushing back. They did this with Biden. I saw Democrats, kind of push back, and you had these talking heads going out and saying, yeah, he did the listing all the bills that he signed and all the executive orders that he signed. And, people were actually pushing back and asking, what did that do for me? What did that do for us and my people or whatever? I think social media has afforded us that opportunity to
correct.
be able to open our eyes to see that this is all bullshit.
Yeah, it's a good thing about
this is all politics.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I will say, and then maybe we can wrap up with a question I have for both of you, is that as far as early as 2015 and 2016, I never had any illusion or expectation that Trump is what you would call a hardcore constitutionalist, or has a first principle outlook, and
No.
I understood that because when you're competing for votes at such a large scale, you can't be a purist. So that was something that a concession I gave to him.
Sure.
And why am I bringing this up? I think people need to be realistic about what they think Trump represents for them, and understand that this is more, the national stage is more complicated, and he's not going to be your Thomas Massey, he's not going to be your Rand Paul, and you just have to work with that, And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself: is this still going to be a net positive compared to the last administration? Some people would say no. I would argue yes. It's more ways than it's negative, right? So that's my take. So let me start with Eric. It's Independence Day. How do you explain what this day is to your kids, and why do we observe this day?
Wow. I make a point of talking to my kids about this sort of stuff all the time. Just in terms of what America means, right? I try and supplement their history lessons in school. And we live in a place where they still proudly, teach American history, which is great. And we also talk about, and again, my kids are, not too old yet. But we talk about the philosophies. I often talk about the opposite a lot, because, we are very America in our house. We have our flags outside and stuff. I love the country. I never bristled at saying the Pledge of Allegiance. This is voluntary. I'm on this team. I was born here, and I thank my lucky stars that I was. You know what I mean? We're all on this team, and it's a great team. But I do talk to my kids about the opposite stuff, the stuff that they see. I do try and monitor to some degree what they watch. They're not on TikTok, but I do let them watch YouTube, right? YouTube has their own, they have shorts. And every once in a while there'll be, something that comes on that's sort of like, Marxist or, part of that ideology. And I'll talk about it with them. And I'll talk about how, the left in general is, wants things to be fair, wants life to be, in reality, to be essentially something that it really is not. And I talked to them about the fact that life is unfair. You know what I mean? Like, how, life sucks sometimes, and, certain groups of people or certain countries, like history and how things roll out, and it's and how government and force is the exact wrong way to try and right some of these historical wrongs. And I try and also talk to them about, the squishy stuff like empathy and, stuff that the left thinks that they own, but I would argue that they don't. But again, just, sort of the tools and the knowledge to navigate some of this stuff, and to pick it out and to recognize it when you're being propagandized to. The last thing I'll say is I also do talk about, Trump and the Republic. I don't ever say, the Republicans are bad and the Democrats are good. It's not it at all. I make a point of when the Republicans do something bad or make a wrong decision or do the same things that I was talking about, I'll point it out, because I want them to have a very clear, honest view of the entire landscape. But coming back around to America, this is the only place on the planet that you can do that stuff. And I do make a point, talk about, freedom of speech is a great one, because I don't know how old I was, but you guys, when I realized that, I assumed that everywhere had a lot of the freedoms that America had. Right. And I remember, like, I was in my 20s and 30s. I was like, what, Canada you can't say that in Canada? It's like, no, they don't have it. I'm like, oh my God, so I try and talk to them about that sort of stuff too, about the Constitution, about, the Federalist Papers and the founding principles. So we inculcate that into we have honest conversations in our house, and we try and talk about it all. And, we are very proud and honored to live here, and we think that our kids are too.
Well said, Eric. And Nikki, what does Independence Day mean to you? And
well, I don't know. In short, simple. It's America's birthday, and the birthday of an idea of freedom without a king, of this idea of a republic and a new republic. I know I've seen a lot of people say that even very pessimistic about the idea of a republic, because no republic has ever lasted before. Most of those cases, actually, I can't think of a single case where a republic was formed where there once wasn't a monarchy or some sort of, some other form of total control of government, and those people decided that things were better under the monarchy. Yes, because they were given things, and so it is very difficult to go from that state to being a republic. But America was a new republic when it formed, and the real patriots who believed in that took a stand in what they believed in and physically fought for it against the odds and won. We needed to do that with help. It was financed. It was by outside help. It was financed and supported by other countries. So we didn't do it alone. So we do need to remember that and our place in the world. But we have grown since then. We have definitely created wounds in the formation of the country too. It's not entirely perfect the way we did it. We started off as a model of as a beacon of freedom for everyone, and we enslaved people who we thought did not deserve that kind of freedom. But we are trying to heal those wounds, and I think that if people look at history as what it is, as history, remove sort of these emotional attachments to it, look at our story and see what it is, I think they'd have a positive view on what we are in general. Because of course we've done some shady things with other countries, tried to manipulate and change regimes and lots of things. But I don't think that's unlike any other country. But what makes us unique is that, yes, we were a new republic. We founded on a new idea for protecting people's natural freedoms. And it's pretty difficult to find another country who has done this successfully. And we're coming up on 250 years of this when they told us that we wouldn't survive. There's still hope. We just need to fight for it. And we always have to have that spirit that it's not gonna sustain itself. We need to fight for it and continue to fight for it. And the only way to do that is what Eric said, is kind of look at what other countries do. Go visit other places, see what your life will be like. See what the rules are and regulations, and hey, if you choose something else, you go there, you want to live there, you go for it. But you can't overall say that there's a better place to live. It's home. So
you are into hope too. I'm
an optimist.
Because I think everyone was taking a dump on me in the last MCS. Like, look at Percy, he's the hope guy.
Yeah, well, I don't have my hope in people. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a problem. I think a lot of times we are hoping people are going to
exactly. Good point. Yeah.
To live up to their expectations and do things. We need to be looking outside of ourselves as human beings, look at ourselves as individuals. What are we doing to make it happen? Because if we're only basing our hopes and optimism on what other people are going to do, we are always going to be disappointed. So
yeah, well said. I like that. So I actually have one happy bean that I kept in the fridge. I found it, and I think Eric would enjoy this actually immensely. So let me you guys may, I don't think you've seen this yet. Hold on. Here's a good happy bean to cleanse the timeline. And have you guys seen this?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Volume up.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not a cat person, but what kind of cat do you have?
What kind of cat do I have? I have two. They're little mutt cats.
Great. Okay. Was that a happy bean?
Sure,
it's a happy bean, even if it's AI.
AI.
Well,
those are very well trained cats.
It's a well trained. I just love animals doing,
I saw that this week. That's cute.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm. Oh. That's okay.
Not that fresh. So, all right. Well, thanks for showing up. Happy Independence Day. And
you too.
Let's see what happens next week. Gather your beans, your best beans, happy beans, bitter beans too. They're all welcome. All kind of beans are welcome. So, all right, guys. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Happy America.
Happy America.